Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Mark, I'm going to ask you some questions. One word answers only, okay? What is the most overlooked part of horse training?
Leading.
What is one thing that sets a horse up for most tasks?
Leading.
What is it that most horses are very likely to not do perfectly?
Leading.
What's one of the most important things that we can all work on?
Leading.
Any guesses what this podcast session is on?
Leading.
Leading! That's right. This session is all about leading in various contexts. So we've got leading in terms of feel and responding to feel and how we can get that a bit better, leading away from home and the challenges that sometimes horses can present when we're doing that. And then also just making sure that they're understanding feel and moving when we want them to. So I'm going to start off with a question from Adele from the UK. And on leading, she has a horse who is poorly socialised with separation anxiety, and he can brace when he's leading and he'll lean into the pressure. What she'd like to know is, when he braces, how much pressure should she give on the rope before finding an alternative way to get him to respond? And how much time should she give him to respond to the feel on the rope?
So basically, there's some sort of, along the sort of, different styles of teaching horses how to lead, there's a point where people pull on the rope and then very quickly they'll go to a stick and say tap the horse down the ribs or something like that, or up the hip with a stick to get them to come forward. They might put a breeching rope or a butt rope on a young horse and they pull on their head, and then very quickly to get the horse to come forward, they'll pull on the breeching rope. The horse will feel like breeching or butt pressure from behind and come forward. There's various things that we can do, but at the end of the day, it's, on a horse that's already kind of, has started or leading and things like that, there's a point that you have to commit to the lead rope till the horse makes a change, and sometimes that may require firming up quite a bit. Now, if you're going to firm up quite a bit, I tend to sort of put a padded holder on, so I'm not got a heavy knotted holder, or you don't want to cause a great deal of pain or rub the horse's skin or press sensitive nerves, but you have to kind of get to a point that you can put quite a bit of pressure on their head, as in they've felt quite a bit of pressure and they've responded to it correctly. The reason, that with some horses that lock up and don't come forward to pressure or shut out the pressure, that we have to sometimes go to quite a big amount of pressure, is the last thing you'll ever want to see is a horse pull back on a post with all their force and not know how to make a change for the benefit and safety of themselves, okay? So some people are a bit worried about pulling on a horse's head, but the last thing they want to ever see is when they flip over backwards or they really damage themselves, put their pole out, things like that, or worst case scenario, choke themselves nearly because the holder slips, or because they just don't know how to make a change. So the pressure a horse that could put on itself one day when it gets a fright, when it's tied up to something hard, and some people never hard tie their horse, but I've heard so many scenarios of a rope getting hung up, caught in a horse float or horse trailer, and not being able to free up the horses, and the other day a horse even just was banging its head and then it ended up with a fractured skull because it was kind of fighting and pulling and panicking. So when we do have horses that lock up and shut out pressure, I will sometimes put all my weight on that rope. But what you have to be super careful of is it the horse that's triggered to flip over backwards as soon as you add too much pressure? Those horses, for anyone listening to this, don't just sit on that rope and pull and trigger them to flip over backwards, because I don't want to encourage people to do that. So if it's a chronic rearer or one that's got a real strong head fight that's learnt to really flip over, rear up, all that sort of stuff, then there's a way around it. But for horses that just shut out the pressure, lock up, sometimes, I might hold and I might firm and I'll kind of firm up quite a bit, and then I might walk off to the side a little bit, see if I can take them off balance a little bit just to get their feet to move. And when those feet move, you might see their brain start to search again because you're just trying to get into that freeze. Sometimes I might hold the pressure, bang a flag on my leg until they wriggle and push against me. So sometimes horses that freeze, they're shutting out. So what you actually want them to do is search, and sometimes pushing back into the pressure is actually better than just locking up and freezing. So when I bang my leg or pop a flag, that causes them to push back a little bit, and then they'll start to wriggle, and then they might just free up and come forward. But sometimes if a horse starts to set and brace, I might just kind of bump, and I'll put a firm bump and you'll see them going, I don't know what to do, and then all of a sudden they'll search and start to move their feet and start to find the answer and find the path of least resistance. The reason as I said before, it's essential to go through this is you never ever want to see a horse get into the worst possible scenario where they've pulled against themselves and the rope has got stuck, okay? So there's a point where we have to sort of say, no, you've got to find the answer under a certain amount of pressure, with a certain amount of pressure on you, because some horses that have been trained under threshold all the time, even with leading skills and everything, they accidentally get themselves in a pickle. They go over threshold and they don't know how to find the answer. So I'd say try different pressures with the rope, going back to the question. Add more pressure, bump the pressure a little, move side to side a little bit, see if you can get that horse, even if you get on a 90-degree angle and kind of get their head to come to the side, until you see the horse just free up and do something different, then stand quietly. Don't say keep leading, keep going, come with me. Just get them to, like I talk about sometimes with the one range start, when you're riding a horse, you're just a parking officer. You just say, don't park there. But you're not saying park over there. You're just saying don't park there. And when the horse parks and freezes, you do something with their rope till they unpark. They free up. They start to search. And soon enough, they'll stop freezing and they'll start to follow the rope. If that extra pressure you're putting on that you're testing is kind of not working and you've pulled them off to the side a little, you've gone to the other side, then you might start to put a stimulant. You might get a flag and put it high up in the air, so the horse goes, what's that up there? And that'll wake them up a little bit, take them out of the freeze. But just be careful that, when you do that, you might be off the side a little bit so they can free up and just turn around a little bit, and just, test other things visually to get them to break free, or even a noise like a clap or a bang on the leg just to kind of take them out of the freeze and get them to let go of that strong thought. But be prepared that when they let go of the strong thought, they may lean on you and you have to kind of hang in there a little bit to get them to sort of release and come towards the feel, not just push against it. But yeah, I'd say it's okay to go to a firmer pressure. Firm pressure doesn't wreck and make horses super paranoid. It's more so the idea of escaping all the time that kind of, I think, makes horses a lot more paranoid and gives them a lot more anxiety. Okay,
so how long should she be asking for a response? How long do you hang in there?
Well, you got to read every horse a little differently. Some horses you can see they're frozen, but they're kind of, there's a bit of, they're analysing a little bit, and they're sort of, if you hold a little longer, there's going to be a change start to happen. Some horses, it just looks like the permafrost has set in and nothing's going to happen. And you can see that very quickly. And if they just kind of glaze over, freeze, lock up, and just kind of almost look like they're going to shut out or shut down in that pressure, then you got to do something to get them searching. So as I say, try firming up. Go firm as you can a little, see what happens. But just remember, everybody, as I said before, if that horse has a hint that it's going to go up, and you have to let off on that pressure and work out a plan B or something like that, which I could help you with, but we won't go into that in this discussion.
In this one. Okay, because we're sticking to leading. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to the next question. It's from Jack. He's been working on your challenge, Mark, challenge number 2, which is a series which guides people through some of Mark's philosophies. With any horse, it's great to sort of go back to the beginning and understand what to look for and some ideas of how to train. But he's doing the challenge 2, and he's finding that when he picks up a light feel on the lead rope, his horse will move towards it, but when the feel goes to neutral, she comes forward, but she doesn't stop. So then he ends up slapping his leg or stamping his foot or popping the flag, and she will just walk straight into him or straight past her. So he says clearly she's responding to the light feel like a cue to walk, and she just keeps walking rather than following the feel. So he sort of feels it may have highlighted a bit of a personal space and boundary issue, and he's wondering whether he should work on that first, or any tips for you in terms of getting her to follow the feel as opposed to anything else that she might be doing.
Okay, so I don't know like most horses, and every question, it's hard to, you can't ask a question with the whole history of a horse, because it would take up a whole podcast just in the question. But I have a feeling like most of those kind of sort of highly aware Arabs, they're going to use their eyes. They're going to sort of process the level of threat, dangers around them by constantly sort of using their eyes for everything. So as soon as she starts to walk forward, she walks up to you. Maybe in the past she's been driven, so she's motivated to kind of go forward, and she's not aware of where you're standing and that there is a sort of a certain area around you that she just can't walk into. So, with a lot of horses like that, I would work on an awareness lesson first. So before I get them to, follow the feel of the lead rope. So basically, when I start working on a lead rope, and this is so important in leading, is I basically neutralise my body language and say, now it's all about the lead rope. And people have heard the joke that I say all the time, just to take, and it's just to sort of, try and teach people the seriousness of that lead rope. As I call the lead rope the missus, and I call it the missus with a capital THE, because who has first say? The missus. Who has last say? The missus. Who's most important? The missus. And people say, well, why do you put so much important on the lead rope? I thought we were supposed to be important, the connection between us and all that sort of stuff. And I say, well, have you wondered why your horse paws the ground when you walk away from it, and you just, tied it over there or hung the rope over a rail and it pawed the ground? I said, because it started to sort of feel a little bit lost when you left it, and the connection that it has with you. And then the horse gets stressed because it doesn't trust the rope enough, and it's not enough, and it's not connected with the rope enough to stay with the rope. Okay, so that's why I say to everybody, you don't need to mix body language, connection work, and all this other mystical dancing stuff with lead rope skills all at once, because chances are, especially like your horse, a very bright-eyed Arab that's kind of using its eyes to process everything, well, they're going to use their strongest analytical tool, which is their eyes, and they're going to analyze, process everything through their eyes. So the misses will be sort of down the line somewhere. The rope's going to be less important. So, but first, your horse still has to make good visual decisions. If my horse is making really poor visual decisions, then I might work on that first, because that's super important, that at liberty without a halter on, when you're not asking something with the rope, that they don't just run into people, they don't just barge through, they know their surroundings, they know where people are standing, they can process it, they know how to move back away from things and around things, okay? So that's what you work on first. So what I do is I might just get a little flag, doesn't have to be anything special. I'll just hold it, I might even just hold it just up against beside my shoulder, and I might walk along, and if I stop and the horse doesn't recognise that I've stopped, or it's just looking ahead and going to walk straight through me, or not even think, I'll shake the flag a little bit and I'll go, oh, what was that? And you'll see it sort of get a little startled, look at the flag, but then it'll stop for a second. And then it brings its awareness back to you and what just happened. And I'll just walk around until the horse is really knowing where you're standing, where you're walking, when you're stopping, when you're backing. The other thing I also do is get them to be able to move away with their eyes from like the from like not away from you like you're chasing them, but if you were to just walk backwards quietly, the horse just walks backwards because it's seen you coming into its space a little bit, so it sort of gives you space. You're not going to kind of shush them and take space off them. So when you're working on space, don't work on the fact that, oh, my horse is pushy. I'm working on you not being pushy. Just teach it to sort of measure a distance. So your boundary could be maybe 1 meter, it could be 2 meters. What you can make up one for that particular lesson and just say, can you sort of stay at 2 meters from me? So if you step back and that 2 meters gets, goes to sort of 1.5 meters, then you stand, you shake the flag a little bit till the horse creates that 2 meters, and then you step in towards the horse quietly. And then if as soon as that distance of 2 meters gets smaller, then you shake the flag, not when you're right up against the horse or you've got to 1 meter. Do it as soon as that horse hasn't recognised to keep that same distance. And that sort of helps them just be very aware of where you are and things like that. And once your horse is aware of that, knows how to rock back and come forward and move around, and then I might work on the lead rope. So that's when I work on, now I'm going to ask you one step at a time. Now, because you've worked on spatial awareness, the horse won't be kind of coming into your space like you've got like a gravity that it's pulling into. So because you've created a bit of a force field around you, so then you won't have that effect where the horse is coming in all the time. So then what I'd probably do is I'd just stand very quietly, and I'd put a long rope on. I usually horses work better on a long rope because it makes them think more, because there's a bit of a difference. And I'd just place the rope. I'd keep the end of the rope on in my hand, and I just walk backwards until I'm at the 6 meter mark, and that rope's just gently hanging on the ground. And at any time the horse tries to walk forwards, at the start of the lesson, I could just put the flag up and give it a little shake, because remember, you've already taught the horse to be cautious and step back a little bit when you put the flag up and give it a shake or something like that. So the horse goes, oh, okay, I'm going to step back a bit. And then you just walk to the end of the rope and you just stand there for a while, and the horse has just got to stand quietly at a 6 meter distance. And then one step at a time, you just pick up the rope very, very quietly, and you pick up the knot quietly, and they just got to lean forward and just take that one step forward, and then you just gently place the rope on the ground again, and teach them to stalk like a cat, following the rope, 1 step at a time, stop, 2 steps, stop, 1 step, stop, until they can come just about all the way up to that sort of 2 meter mark, or the original boundary that you set. And then you place the rope again and you walk backwards and do that again until they start to recognize that, oh, you're moving and I'm not following you. And when you're standing, I'm following the rope. So they're not sort of instantly seeing you move and think they've got to follow you. And that's a really good sort of ground tying lesson, and just a responsibility or a rope responsibility lesson. And they start to listen to the rope. And then you'll get to a stage after you've done a bit of that you can actually just take away the flag completely and everything goes through the rope. The reason why you have to get to everything going through the rope is because you're kind of using the feel of the rope to get them to take one step and hoping that when you place the rope that they'll stop. But if they don't, you're actually tuning into their eyes with the flag to say, don't come forward. So the stop has to be through the rope and more defined through the feel of on the halter, opposed to using their eyes, especially if those horses are using their eyes, like I said, like your horse that's using their eyes to make decisions all the time. So there'll be a point there when you go one step, and if they don't stop, you put a bit of wriggle in the rope and say, hey, that's too forward, and they'll feel that wriggle and go, oh, I don't want to walk into that, so they'll stop. And then you teach them, just to do everything through the rope. And that's when, as I said, your body language is very neutral. No pre-warning body language stuff, all through the rope.
And there's a video on that with Marvel Jack, if you're interested in what Mark's talking about. It's quite specific to that sort of cat.
Yeah,
sneaky.
And there's another grey horse. There's a grey horse at a clinic too where I'm doing that lesson, because it was a particularly kind of, it wasn't very centered, and I used that rope sort of technique to just get it to stand quietly and follow the feel of the rope. But yeah, and then once they've done that for a bit, you'll actually another good thing I say to everybody, like I do this a lot, is stand on a mounting block, work your horse from a mounting block, sit on a chair, lead your horse from a chair. Just completely, like the other day I sat on the ground to lead a horse, and I said, why did you sit on the ground? And I'm like, well, because the horse is so paranoid when I stand up. If I sit on the ground, it goes, oh, he can't chase me down there. And it became more of a raw horse instead of a horse that was trying to predict and be nervous all the time. And I was trying to just say, I want to show this horse that the only thing I want it to listen to is what the feel of the rope's telling it, nothing to do with me.
Okay, the next question, moving on, Mark, because I know you can talk on this subject for a long time, is from Nat. She has a 5-year-old Highland pony stock horse who she's having problems taking out on walks. She's very affectionate. She'll literally run to her from the paddock. But when she gets a certain distance from home, when she's walking her, she just starts to circle around her. She's finding that she can't do anything like backing up. Sometimes she'll even put in a little rear, and she just wants to turn for home. She'll do sort of head shaking, and she'll bump into her as well. She's done a year of leading out, coming back home and leading out again. She knows the road. She's very connected to her, and they stand still with the lead rope on the ground, just trying to get her to settle. And she'll do a few licks and a few chews, but then it will all start again. They go back to the snake lines and trying to get her to lead past something. But she's finding that once this pony gets into the fretting state, nothing seems to help her except going home. And then she's fine again. She has tried walking her out with her paddock mates, that's a mare and a gelding. And the mare can kind of get really anxious as well, and even more anxious than the pony. It just seems to be this particular point where they just can't get any further from their home. So she's just wondering if trying to go out further is a problem, or is it something to do with the leading?
Oh, I can talk about this subject quite a lot. It might be something to do with the leading. So, no, by the sounds of it, you've done the same thing over and over and over, taking her out, and it hasn't really improved the way she can come down when she has a little apocalyptic moment. So what I'm kind of thinking, without knowing all the answers and having the crystal ball in front of me, is that you possibly have been working in a certain rhythm and routine that hasn't actually exposed her to enough stress in training, which means you've kind of kept her under threshold. And someone, when they talk about wanting to keep their horse under threshold until then I always say, well, what is your horse's threshold? Nobody, some people know their horse's threshold. Some people kind of just think when the horse looks a bit stressed, okay? So I think it's important that you learn to bring up her anxiety a little bit in training. And then now this is the hard thing about training. It's bringing up a horse's anxiety without making it feel like it's personal and you're bullying them all the time. I see a lot of, people have gone down the road of, horsemanship, and they've ended up becoming a bully, and they're creating the anxiety through pressure, not creating clarity and softness through pressure, and also a release to that anxiety through pressure. So this is the sort of the part that's really important, is you're creating a pathway through feel and pressure, because feel is a form of pressure. It's a form of resistance, when the horse pushes against the boundaries of pressure and stuff like that. So there is resistance and things in it. But that feel offers them a pathway into a better feeling, okay? I think what you have to do is teach her to stress a little and then take her out of that, because I don't think that's what's happened enough. So basically she's been calm, going okay, until she suddenly goes, geez, I'm a long way from the horses. Oh no, what am I going to do? And then when you say come out of that space, she goes, I can't, I'm stressed. You just got to take me home. So, that's why I say to you, you've got to sort of do something to get her to kind of come up and stress a little. Then you've got to say, now come out of that, and show her a way out of it to let go of that stress. And I have a feeling also, and I just did a lesson just before this, before we're doing this podcast, just online, with a student that I worked with at a clinic, probably 12 months ago. We just did an online lesson, and I said, you're doing all these things well, but I think we have to sort of increase the leading speeds, ask for a bit of more of a snappier response in the horse, go a little faster, slow down. hang on a minute, I'm running late, I'm busting for the loo and I've got to get there in a hurry, so quick, hurry up with me. Because I think she got in a bit of a rhythm, and I, by the sounds of it with this horse, I think you might be in a bit of a rhythm where you're asked to lead past at this speed and then asked to do this and asked to do that, and she's kind of doing it all okay. But if you were to say to her, the rope's going faster right now, are you able to catch up with it and stay with it? The horse might go, no, that's too fast, I'm not used to that. Because when she's going out and she's getting in a panic, when she hits that rope harder, it's kind of frazzling her, and so what I'm sort of thinking is she's used to a certain rhythm and speed, and when it all changes, then you're finding it hard to help her. So not only do you have to kind of say, hey, I might shake a flag over there or bang a rail or shake something that makes the horse get a little bit nervous, and then when they get nervous, I'll pick up the rope and say, but why don't you follow this, and soften, and then they start to follow the feel. And they feel a little bit better. So I'm encouraging a sort of a smaller apocalypse opposed to the big apocalypse that happens that you can't help. And then I'm helping her out of it. Okay. So they're the things you've got to work on a little bit and try and sort of see if you can do that and see how well she can let go of those strong thoughts. You know, most scenarios I'm saying, you know, go and test your horse and say, when it's got a strong thought, will it let go of it? Will it let go of a medium one? And then, you know, so you got to test that all the time. The other thing is increase the rein speed, as in the rope speed, the leading speed. You know, back up now, come forward, back slow, come forward faster. You know, really get her responding and thinking about the pressure, not just kind of just going through the routine of leading. And I think that'll help her really direct her thoughts into it and the importance of following it. And if she runs late, it's okay to firm up and say, hey, it's okay, because if you don't teach them a pathway under pressure, like I was explaining before, then when they're under pressure, the rope panics them. So you have to kind of get to a stage that they do test it a bit, you hold and firm up, and then they come through and they lead through and find the path of least resistance and let go of the strong thought. So you're kind of ramping it up a little bit and then bringing them down into a soft place. And remember, like I've explained before, is, you know, horses, I explained it in another podcast, is, you know, you can't just let a horse be on high alert for an hour. You have to say, here's a problem. Now, here's a safe place. Here's a problem. Here's a safe place. So a problem, you know, in zebras might be, oh, there's lions that are hunting us. Let's go like the blazes. Get out of here. And then, right, we're at safety now. The lions are giving up. Lick and chew. Let's eat grass and scratch each other and go back to normal. So there's an up and then there's a down, and I think in that respect you got to work with the horses like that too.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. That was some great answers, and thank you to all the questions that have come through.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
You've been listening to Australia's very own Mark Langley, a horseman with many insights from his decades of dabbling. Jump online to keep learning. marklangley.com.au